Rachel Martinez, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So, if you would just tell the audience where you live and
Okay. My name is Rachel Martinez, and I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
sounds good. And have you lived there your entire life?
Well, I lived there from birth until I would say 20, and then I moved to California, and then finally came back November of 2019.
Gotcha. And that actually reminds me, you're living in California. Is that where you met John Gomez and how you ended up in the movie When I Stutter?
Yes, it is. Yes.
That's cool. And so you were one of the people that stutter that were highlighted in that. I know that movie really brought a lot of awareness, and I think it really brought people, you know, to a great extent, sort of inside the experience and uh, the pain, but also the potential, if you will, and the human side of stuttering. I think sort of the experience of it. Um, so, if you would, I'm sure yourself, as many of us, have some challenging memories surrounding stuttering from childhood, perhaps, which is when most of us sort of developed our stutter and started developing feelings about our stutter and our life as a person that stutters and all that. Can you share some of your more challenging memories?
Sure. Um, One of my memories that still haunts me is my social studies teacher knew I had a severe stutter and still called on me to read out loud. And I could not get out any of the words, and my face was red the entire time, and it was uh, it was worse because I had a crush in my classroom, and so it was embarrassing to read with the severe stutter and a red face in front of him. And so that memory was just, it still haunts me.
There was a feeling in that moment. I mean, I know I had it also, but did you have a feeling like when I'm stuttering, I'm not beautiful or lovable or that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely.
Same here. Yeah, especially at that stage of life. And yeah, and I can identify with that feeling also. I mean, probably the most terrifying memories in my life, even though I've had some other challenging memories like, car wrecks and people dying, loved ones and that sort of thing. But the most fearful, deeply fearful, just terror filled moments in my life was as a kid, say, late middle school and into high school, where that scenario, like it's the first day of class sort of thing, or later, but the teacher says, okay, we're going to go around the room and everybody's going to introduce themselves and say something about yourself. I mean, just like that feel, like I remember a feeling almost like I was being sucked down into some sort of vortex and I was trying to find something to grab in a panic and there was nothing to grab. There was nowhere to go. I mean, sometimes I'd pretend I had to go to the bathroom or something and just disappear for 20 minutes, but
Mhm.
that never seemed to work very well. And so yeah, I totally know the feeling. And I think those childhood feelings are deeply well, they became a deep part of us, right? Because essentially, I don't know if this is, uh, I don't know if this is sort of diagnosed or not, but it's almost like a form of PTSD, right? And that those terror-filled memories of just being utterly freaked out to our core about having to talk in front of people and stutter and all that just sort of got deep in us. Um, and so like after that, just in general, over the course of your life, what would you say it, um, what would you say has been your relationship with your stutter? I mean, is it always something that sort of still causes a good bit of pain on a regular basis for you?
It does, yes. And it's been very hard to keep a job. Um, um, the job I had in, I forget the year, I think it was in 2012. Um, I, um, I stuttered so much to talking to customers to the point where I would cry on the job. And so it was an all day pressure point, just having to force out my words in a fast paced environment. I didn't have the time to just relax and just focus on my breathing. It was just talk, 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 talk. And it was just extremely hard to stay at that job.
Understood. Understood. And in social events and that sort of thing, like parties, when you're, I mean, we don't really have parties in COVID, but BC before COVID, were, uh, were those kind of social settings really, really difficult for you as well?
Yeah, yeah. And at parties, I would need a glass of wine or beer in order to get into that mood to talk, to get that courage. Yeah.
It has been called for people that stutter and non-stutterers alike. Alcohol has been called liquid courage, and
Yeah.
I guess it's aptly named. I had that experience also when I was in high school. When I would have a couple of drinks, suddenly relaxation and the confidence that it would bring, and I would be much more outgoing and much more, uh, you know, just in control of my speech. And obviously, that's the opposite of the way, And this is one of those things. Having talked to many people that stutter, it really varies from person to person. Some people stuttering gets more challenging when they're drinking, others gets better, and some are neutral. But in my experience, in high school at least, it would get significantly better, and suddenly I was in control of my speech. And obviously, for fluent people, their quality of their speech usually goes downhill when they drink, as we know. But yeah, so I've had that experience as well. And so now, Rachel, you're a part of the second group of trainees on this new program, Stutter with Confidence. Um, and so you've been going through phase one of the program, and we're actually starting as we record this first half of this interview. We're the day before the phase two of the program. So the next 3 days are going to be long days with lots of hard work, but a lot of fun as well. And what has been your experience so far? Would you say, obviously you can't speak to phase two, but as far as what you've experienced in phase one, where essentially we go out together as a team. So on these Zoom calls, and I, pair you guys up in breakout rooms, usually of two people. So, in your case, you're in a mall in Mexico, and someone else might be in the mall in Philadelphia or LA or wherever. And everybody's talking to people, talking to strangers in the mall, practicing looking them in the eye, basically building up our courage and confidence and all that good stuff. And you've been doing that. We're also doing, we're being very open and honest with people. We're doing, some people call it disclosures. I don't know if I like that term disclosure, because it sounds like you're disclosing some,
Mm.
horrible secret or something, some like sin or crime. But anyway, just going out and telling people what you're doing. Hey, I have a stutter and I'm out today talking to people to overcome the shame and the fear and the hesitance to do that, essentially. What's been your experience so far, would you say, with doing that?
Well, my experience is talking to more people than I usually do, because my stutter has made me a hermit. Just being to myself, ignoring people. I do smile at um, everyone I see, but I don't take the initiative to talk to them. And another experience I've always had is um, my worst uh, my worst word to say is thank you. And so every time I walk to a public door and I see someone walking there too, I wait until they go in first, because they always open up the door for me, and then I'm forced to stutter on thank you. And so, and there was a lot of times I couldn't say the word, and then it felt like as if they thought I was being rude and you're not thanking them.
I remember having that. We're like 4 for 4, that exact same experience, where I would have a tough time saying thank you oftentimes, and whether it's like in a store where you just bought something and then you just walk away and you don't say thank you. And, yeah, there were so many times that I wouldn't say it. I would want to say it. So then, like you said, then you come across as rude, and you're like, I'm not a mean person, but that person probably thinks I'm not a nice person, or, you know, that I
Yeah.
wasn't raised right, or whatever the case may be. So I hear you on that. And on these contact sessions that we've been doing in phase one, you've been saying thank you to every person that you encounter, right?
Yeah. Hmm. And in those moments of saying thank you, the word thank you is always at the end of the contact. And so I believe that the reason why I hardly stuttered saying thank you during these contacts, because I was saying it in a sense of relief. It's over. Thank you. Yeah, and
Well, what has been your impression? So, from telling so many people basically about your journey and what you're out there doing that day in terms of your stutter, what has been your experience of people's reactions?
sure. Um, at first, they would look like bugged because a random person is talking to them, as if I'm selling them stuff. But then you mentioned I'm a person who stutters. I'm walking I am walking around talking to random people to overcome my anxiety and fear, and their face of annoyance would drop, and they would get that sense of I care about this, and so it would make me feel much better about talking to them about it.
I hear you. And it's interesting, I've done this many times as well. And I was on most of those contact sessions with you through Zoom, through the video calls. And, it's amazing, right? Because 2 seconds before you walked up to those people, they didn't know that you were even a person in the world, right? Because you didn't know them. And then, a minute later, after you tell them what you're doing, most people are like, oh, that's awesome. Like, you're inspiring me. Keep up the good work. Go get them, don't let your stutter stop you, right? And they don't know even anything about, most people don't know anything about it before we sort of educate them a little bit. But we're also spreading awareness of stuttering when we do this, right? So we're not just helping ourselves, helping to overcome our own, fear and sort of habit of holding back our voice and saying what we want to say in this world. We're also just educating people. And so now the next person that they meet in life that stutters, they're because I guarantee you they all remember you, because how many times does somebody come up to you in life and, do something like that, right? Like, hey, I've got a stutter and I'm working on it. So that's totally out of the ordinary for them, So those are the kind of things that people remember. And so they're going to be that much more open-minded and compassionate and aware, just general awareness. The next person that stutters that they meet, and it's also helping to go against that stereotype, because our courage is on full display when we're doing this, right? Because it does take courage, and everybody knows it, whether they understand stuttering or not. They can imagine, if you have a pretty challenging speech impediment, to just being out there talking to people, being open and honest, really attacking the fear takes a certain amount of character and courage, and that's those things are universally respected.
Yeah.
So, and it's pretty fun, right? Because we do it together as a team. So you're doing one where you are, and somebody else is doing one, and it's like, and then we're talking about it in between. It's much more doable and much more fun to do it than just doing it on your own, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna go do it. So that's cool. And so out of this phase 2, what you can be perfectly honest, because you haven't gone through it yourself, so you don't, seeing is believing in many ways in this world. What are your expectations going into phase 2? Like not your sort of utopian dream or your worst case scenario, but what are your genuine expectations of what you think?
My expectations is to be able to control each stutter that comes out. Instead of my stutter controlling me and keeping me inside myself, I expect to learn techniques to control that and to be able to talk more in a more doable way, other than letting a stutter control my face and my motor habits.
Yeah, so not have to struggle so much and have it take so much effort to get through syllables and words, essentially.
Yeah.
I totally hear you on that. I totally hear you. And I think I think in general, wanting to struggle less is a very common feeling with people that stutter. Uh, and we haven't gotten fully into this yet because you haven't done phase two, so we haven't fully delved into these details. But we're not chasing, you know, though it's very natural to want this, but I think it's a counterproductive thought to chase sort of perfect, normal, like normal fluent speech, quote unquote, perfect, no stuttering moments ever. I mean, obviously it'd be great to, you know, if somebody had that pill we could take and have that happen, that'd be fantastic, but such a thing doesn't exist. And in the meantime, chasing perfection, or oh, we want everybody to see us as a normal fluent speaker and that sort of thing, tends to be counterproductive because it puts a bunch of extra pressure on us and all that. So we're going to learn a new way to speak. I mean, it's our voice, obviously, and it's our mind and formulation, things that we're saying, of course. But we're going to learn to not chase perfect fluency, but to chase stuttering on our terms, having disfluencies on our terms without struggling. So, for example, stretching out some sounds like I'm doing right now, or so. Starting some words and then pausing like I'm doing right now, but I'm controlling my timing, right? It's happening on my terms, not just the stuttering sort of, you know, the struggle just falling on your head whenever the heck it wants in an out of control way where we have no idea when this word's going to come out, right? Which is a really uncertain, it's an uncertain way to live. Now, you know, once again, I think we need to speak no matter whether we're going to stutter or not. That's you know, everybody can live the way they want to live, but that, for me, that's what made me a much happier camper in general, was to say what I wanted to say, to never run away saying words that I think need to be said, right? Or that I want to say. But it sure is nice if we can also know how to, you know, be the captain of our ship in those moments and do it on our terms and do it under control without all that extra struggle. Because the struggling, as you know, is physically tiring, you know, I'll just model it here, to push through blocks like that. That's exhausting, right? So I remember a conversation I had before he died with my 94-year-old grandfather, you know, and I was like recording, I wanted to do like an oral history sort of thing, you know, record like his memories from childhood and his parents and his grandparents and all that kind of stuff, because I knew those things would be lost, you know, once he was gone. And so I recorded it, but we talked for like 3 or 4 hours. And he's 94. He's within a year or so of dying at that point. I was 36. And he was fine just to chill. You know, he was not a person that stutters. He could just talk for 4 hours, no problem. You know, it wasn't taking energy from him. Whereas me, even at 37, which, you know, a lot younger than 94, and I was in good shape and all that, but I was exhausted. I was completely exhausted after 4 hours of battling through, you know, battling through syllables, essentially. And so, yeah, so that's a big part of what we focus on phase two, is how to, you know, how to turn the tables and do this on our terms in a way that's not a struggle. But yeah, so it was great to have you on, Rachel. We'll have you back on after phase two, and you can talk about your experiences then. But get a good night's sleep tonight and a good breakfast tomorrow morning, and we'll see you bright and early.
Yes, I'm excited about it.
Likewise. Yeah, take care. So the video that everybody just saw, the first half of this video, was Rachel and I speaking 5, 6 days ago. And in between then and now, we've done the intensive 3-day phase 2 is what we call it, but essentially the intensive course part of the Stutter with Confidence program. And so it was Rachel and 4 other new trainees. So we put in a lot of hard work, 11 hours a day for 3 days there. And so we'll continue the chat now. It's actually a new chat, but continue the podcast now. Rachel, welcome back. Are you tired after those 3 days? And I know waking up early is well, for everybody. I mean, out in the West, it was real early that we were starting. So are you tired? I'll start with that.
Yeah. I remember attending a trade school for 2 years and having to get up every morning at 6 a.m. And I never got used to that. Yeah.
Right. Everybody tells you, yeah, you'll be used to it in a week, no problem. But you never liked it, huh?
No.
I hear you. So
my mom is an early bird, though.
Gotcha. Well, and a lot of people, the older they get, right? A lot of people in their, 50s and older, it seems like, wake up earlier on average than they maybe did when they were, 15 or 25 or whatever. So I think that's normal. But, and they also just go to bed earlier, I think. Perhaps they get tired at a younger hour and just fall asleep at, 10 o'clock. So therefore they wake up early. Yeah. Anyway, we digress from speech stuff. So you had, so what have been your impressions over the last 5 days, I guess? Just tell me and the audience what you're feeling and sort of what your experience has been.
Okay. Well, my impressions before the program, I was wondering what the techniques were going to be, because I tried practically everything, and everything I tried didn't work. It worked in the comfort of the office, but not in the pressures of outside life.
That was always my experience as well in all the speech therapies I had ever done.
And so now I've noticed whenever I talk in public, whenever I talk with my family, I talk better. I'm able to breathe in a much better way, not in the way that speech therapists in the past have told me, because all they said was, just take a deep breath. But they didn't explain what type of breath to take. And all the techniques, it never worked, it never engraved. And this program, I've noticed on the very first day, is when it started to work instantly after each costal breath.
It's definitely there's a lot of power with deep breathing, and it also helps to get us in a rhythm. So we're breathing on a certain framework, or I'm sorry, we're speaking on a certain framework, and that framework is the disciplined deep breathing. So has it been, and one of the things obviously that I caution you guys against as you're coming off of this intensive training course is, as you know, I caution you guys against overconfidence, because you're feeling more control than you've ever felt, which is, great that the confidence goes way up, but we're trying to replace the old speaking habits, which essentially is that, you know, the stutter comes out whenever it decides to come out, or whenever the stuttering wolf, as I like to call it, decides we can speak. And now we're doing it on our terms. We are deciding when the words are going to come out. And if they don't come out, we know what to do with it so that we're not just struggling, you know. And as we were talking about before we came on air for, you know, this half of the podcast, um, you know, stuttering, I mean, especially for folks like you and me who were, you know, had a pretty good stutter going on. Some people would call it a bad stutter, but had a pretty good stutter going on, pretty severe. It's tiring, like pushing through blocks. Look, like that. I mean, you know, not only are we, you know, is everything super tense, but we're not breathing, and it's just a lot of effort and
Mhm.
super tiring. So, have you enjoyed being able? Well, is this the first time? Well, have you ever been in this level of control and knowing what to do with a block in your life?
No, never.
And is it challenging? Let me ask you this: is it challenging not to get a little carried away and sort of just like, oh, I can talk now and just da. Is it pretty tempting to sort of fall into that fluency trap, as I like to call it?
Well, right now, I'm still trying to keep myself constantly breathing all day long. And yesterday, I was Instacarting with my sister. She was teaching me the ropes. And I've noticed I kept going to my old habits, but then I would stop and coastal breathe, and then I would continue to remind her, I'm still in this program, please help me, because I need to coastal breathe. I cannot go back into my old habits. And so all day was like a back and forth thing, but I was able to every time remember.
Nice. Yeah, and that's good. I mean, I think that's good that you're, it's almost like you're getting warning signals, right? Before you just fall off the tracks totally. You're like, wait a second, we're getting a little wobbly, falling off the tracks. Let me
Yeah.
pull it back into good discipline, right? And it's both that breathing and, you know, you call it voluntary stuttering, intentional disfluency, deliberate disfluency, but once again, doing it on our terms. What people will sometimes see from us is we'll stretch out some of our sounds, or like I'm doing right now, or we will so start some words and then pause like I'm doing right now. So those are disfluencies, right? Technically, but they're not struggling disfluencies, and they're happening on our terms with our timing, and we are by doing that. Well, first of all, we're not chasing fluency. We're not trying to fool people that we're a normal fluent speaker. We're showing that I'm still a person that stutters. I always will be, but you know, it's not a struggle anymore. And then when I'm telling a joke, I can now control my timing. When I'm telling a story, I can control my timing, and you can take liberties sometimes, speed it up. And it's not a slow talking technique. It's not like talking like this. And whenever I was trained on one of those, you know, I'm like, you know, who's talking right now? You know, like that's not Mike Wilson talking. And to me, people have to be able to be themselves, or they're not going to be happy. So we have to talk like, you know, Wilson or Rachel Martinez, but that just means using our own voice and you know, saying it how we want to say it. But But yeah, that's cool that you're already, and I call that reining ourselves in.
Mhm.
You feel yourself getting a little sort of sloppy, spontaneous, sort of, and it's getting a little, you know, it's like, okay, do that, but block release, get ourselves back on the track. You know?
Yes.
So, so on the last day of the course, um, one of the things that we do is we go out and you know, this probably freak people out, but people can do more than they think. Well, so when we started the course, um, what were your expectations? Like, say when we started, you know, back in the summer, and you had started with that initial group, but then, you know, something came up and you didn't have time to finish it. So you came back and joined the second group. And I think perhaps that was partially because you saw some of your friends on the program, you saw the results. And it's like, wait a second, this guy might, you know, might be able to help. But when you started this way back in the summer, when we started originally, uh, what were you, I'm sure the dream was that it would have a massive impact, but what were your realistic, what did you honestly think would happen if you were a betting woman?
Well, another person came up, or you messaged me telling me they have the cure for stuttering. And I was going to take his, but I kept forgetting. And then Cora came up to me on Messenger and introduced me to your program. And for some reason, I felt a little bit more peace with yours. I don't know why. I just felt like that peace, like this is probably the one. And so I expected a whole new way of techniques. And so after hearing Eric talk, because Eric, he was a very bad stutterer in my opinion. And after he came out of the fire, he was refined and he wasn't stuttering. He had control of his breath, control of his words, and control of each sound that he always stuttered on. And so that was a plus for me on top of that.
Yeah, Eric's done real well also. And, you know, anybody that puts in the work and does it is going to have a big impact. So, yeah, one thing you mentioned that, you know, someone else had been messaging you and saying that they had a cure. And, you know, I mean, I haven't looked into that person's program. I don't know who that is, but something I tell everybody is this is not a cure, and there is no cure. I think it's analogous to staying in shape. There are ways to stay in great shape, but there's no cure for getting out of shape, right? There's nothing no pill we can take today or 3-day thing that we, you know, program we can do today that'll guarantee we're going to be in shape 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, et cetera. And this is the same sort of thing. That, you know, we're not cured. This is a controlling our speech in a disciplined, systematic way. But well, and one of the challenges I think, um, well, one of the advantages I will say that we have on our program is that we all practice together, and it's a lifetime membership. So, you know, phase one is what we do, then we do phase two, and then phase three is the rest of our life. And we all need to practice. We call each other regularly. We do our daily warm up. We do our weekly Zoom calls. All grads are, you know, encouraged, more than welcome to come back to all future courses. As you saw, some of the grads from the first group were coming into this one as well, and that just makes it fun. It you know, it's a community feeling. We all stutter. Everybody in the program stutters. We all know exactly what that iceberg below the surface feels like, and have all sort of walked through this same, what's the expression? You're walking in people's footsteps, right? People have already trekked that trek, and you just gotta, follow the trek, and that sense of community, fighting that sense of isolation, because stuttering can be so isolating, right? Because, in our regular life, most of us go through life, me included. I never met somebody else that stuttered like I did through my regular life, unless I was going to hang out with people that stutter. I never met anybody else that stuttered like me. And so it's super isolating, right? You're in you're alone, or it feels like we're alone. And then you find a group where everybody stutters and everybody's sort of rowing in the same direction as far as being trained in the same technique. So we're, picking each other up. We all know what each other should be doing. Sometimes it's easier to, well, when we're talking to somebody, we know what good technique looks like on the program. So if they're, off the rails, we coach each other, we pick each other up, and we support each other. And, so it's fun working on our speech. For me, that was historically, that was one of the most boring things in the world, quote, working on my speech, like reading my, D words in my room: dog, donut, doorknob. It's like you just want to shoot yourself, or that's how I felt. I was so bored, and I just wasn't going to sustain that. And it wasn't in my room where I needed the practice. I could talk in my room, fine, always. It was when you walk out in the real world. And so if it's not transferring out there, if it's not transferring out of the practice setting, then why am I spending 45 minutes reading my D words? What's the point of it? So, but, in this way, it's fun, right? It's you and I right now are practicing our speech. I should shut up so you can talk more and practice more, but, but anyway, yeah, so everybody gets the idea. So, so which day would you say was the most challenging? Would you say the first day of the 3-day intensive was the toughest because you were trying to learn a piece for the first time, or just...
Well, I would say the first day wasn't the toughest. It was the day that I was learning everything. Wait, no. Are we talking about the first or third day?
Well, I'm just, which day was the toughest for you? Was the most challenging, would you say?
Oh, I would say the third day during the contacts.
Gotcha. And I'll just tell people what the contacts are. So on the third day, we have everybody, and, nobody goes out to do this until they've got the tools to, succeed. So it's not like everybody's got the capability to do it by the time we push people out there to do it. But our contact session, we go out to the mall, on the streets, wherever. Obviously, this is COVID, so people got to be masked up. But I go out and we speak with 100 strangers just to basically bring the technique out there to the real world. So what was your experience with the contact session?
Okay. So at first, when it was my turn to do or to talk to people with my techniques, I was having the hardest time with the block releases. At the same time, remembering, take a breath, you block release, pause, and then say what you wanted to say. And so I was having a hard time. getting that until the fourth hour is when I finally just got it. And then it was easy to just automatically talk to people when it was my turn and get it instantly. The block release, the breathing, the just allowing myself to pause, taking my time, and just talking.
And how did that feel?
I felt better, feel much better.
It was, it's fun to see, you know, it's almost like, it's not a perfect analogy, but it reminds me of when somebody's trying to learn to ride a bike, right? And it's so hard and they're falling and they're frustrated and they're, you know, they're kind of hurt and then they figure it out and they're like, oh, this is nice, you know, right? So
Yep.
that was fun to see for sure. For sure. It was, you know, that's always, as a coach, that's always super, super satisfying to see somebody make that breakthrough, you know, and the light bulb go off like, okay, this is how you execute this. This is the sequence. This is what to do when the block comes up. Um, you know, we practice obviously what I call radical honesty by telling people what we're out there doing that day and showing them with the deliberate disfluency. I'm showing them I am not a normal fluent speaker, and please do not confuse me with one. You know, that sort of total reversing of the mentality of wanting to hide, right? Just here it is. Here I am, proud to be a person that stutters. And what was your impression of from both phase one and phase two of other people's react? Like when you tell strangers what you're out there doing and you're just honest with them, what was your overall impression?
Well, I've noticed that people were kind both sessions. Before I started to, or before I learned the techniques and before I learned to breathe in the correct way, I went out and I talked to people and I explained to them that I am a person who stutters. I am out here practicing my speech. And then their face lit up because they were instantly inspired that there was such a person who was a severe stutterer that was out there and forcing herself to talk to random people. And then people. And then the next session with the coastal breathing and the block releases and the hit and holds, it was, I got the same response, but I encountered a few nicer people as well, and people who were more giddy and more excited for me.
Gotcha.
It randomly got dark in here.
Yeah. Can you turn your light on for me?
Yeah. I'm also in my pajamas.
No worries.
There you go. Yeah, I think the sun went into a cloud.
This way too, we'll see your, I don't know if your kittens are around to see in the background this time, but always fun to see. Oh, there they are. Yeah. Cool. Um, yeah, that, yeah, I mean, were you surprised at all overall at how supportive people were when you tell them what you were doing? That's an impression I always got when doing that. It's amazing how many people And they don't, 2 seconds, right before we talked with them, they didn't even know if we were alive or dead, right? They didn't know we existed. And then 1 minute later, they're like, "Oh, good for you," because what you say is, right? I, I have a stutter, and I'm out working on my speech today, getting over the fear and nervousness of talking to people. So I'm out speaking with 100 people. It doesn't have to be long. Thanks for listening. And so many people are like, "That's great. Good for you. Go get them. You're doing great." And I mean, that's kind of, I don't think they're just doing that to be nice. Most of them, I think they're actually like, "That's
Yeah.
cool." Like somebody, because most fluent people have experienced some level of social anxiety, right? That's almost universal. And so they can imagine, I mean, they don't know what it's like to be a person that stutters, but they can imagine if it's hard to get your words out, that would be difficult to go around and just randomly speak with a bunch of people, that it takes courage. And
Yeah.
courage is universally respected, right? And so it's like a little shot. And sometimes people start telling you about their problems, like, "Yeah, I've been trying to learn to play the guitar, or I've been trying to lose weight, or I've been, this or that, or whatever the case may be." And so you actually have these human connections with people in a way that we wouldn't have, obviously, if we were just having some random interaction, let's say. And I mean, as a fluent person, there's all sorts of, little, "Oh, thanks, thank you, go." There's no connection there. It's just a routine interaction, but we're bringing like powerful, uh, something powerful out to the world. And it's also a great way to spread awareness of stuttering, right? Many people have never met anybody that stutters and they don't know anything about it. And so, a lot of times, well, something else we were doing fairly often was asking people, "Do you know anybody that stutters?" So we get them thinking about it. And some people are like, "Yeah, my cousin," or whatever, but a lot of people are like, "No." And now the next person that they meet that stutters, if they do meet somebody else, they'll have more, "Oh yeah, I met that girl in the mall a few years ago. That's right." Like they have more awareness for it.
Yep.
But so yeah, any sort of last thoughts? I know. Well, have you had the conversation with some of your? Well, we do a family and friends session near the end of the course that we did. Maybe maybe you had. You said you saw your sisters yesterday, and
Yes.
was that fun to be able to? Well, did you feel more free to say what you wanted to say?
Yes. Yes. And tonight, I'm attending our Wednesday night church service. And so I will be practicing this tonight when I talk to my church friends as well.
Nice. Speaking opportunities abound for the rest of your life.
Yep. Yep.
It's awesome. Enjoy playing this sport of speaking. And, that's the thing, like we talked about, for fluent people, they get no joy out of, let's say when they're at Starbucks and they ask them their name, they get no joy out of being able to say their name, right? It's a non-event, just like for us to get up and, walk across the room to the bathroom is a non-event. We don't get joy from it, right? But for us, after going a lifetime of oftentimes being, not in control of when our words came out and struggling to get them out, or just not saying the word at all, or saying something that we didn't really want to say because that's what we could say. For us, it can be pretty deep joy in just being able to say your name, right? Or just being able to ask a question, or those simple things. And so actually this sport of speaking, you know, it's not like, oh yeah, I got to stutter and I got to work on my speech so I don't stutter. You know, that sucks, and that's like demotivating, at least to me. But if it's a joyful thing, then, right, you know, who doesn't want more joy in their life, right? So it's when we reverse our mentality and we think of it like a sport or a performing art or a martial art, whatever one's preferred analogy is, but get into it, see it as a craft, and really not see it as a drag, oh, to not stutter, but rather get into this sport, get dialed into my breathing, get dialed into my voice projection, get dialed into formulation, using effective pauses, eye contact, enjoy the whole game. And the result is being in control of our speech, which is, you know, as I said, joyful for a person that stutters. It really is, you know? So, because we know the other side.
Yep. And it's more freeing too. It's so much more freeing.
Mm, that's a good analogy too. We're kind of used to being, I mean, not all of us, you know, some people are fully self-accepted and confident, but many of us have felt like we're in a prison, right? And we just, you know,
Yep.
couldn't get out. Like we, in a deep sense, couldn't get out to the
Hmm.
world. And to be able to step out of that prison and be a free man or free woman is powerful. And I can tell you, you know, it's been 2.5 years, and right, anybody that looks on my YouTube page can see what my speech was like for the first 41 years of my life from the video that's on there, which is called Me Sharing and Stuttering. I'm wearing a red shirt. Um, but for me, that, oh, so it's been 2.5 years since I've had a block that I couldn't immediately release and get in control of on the word fiddlehead, which is a beer in Vermont. And I wasn't sure if it was fiddleback or fiddlebit, but you know, whatever. I had a good block on it, and so it's been 2.5 years, and I am pretty verbal, so I've said a lot of words in those 2.5 years, but it hasn't lost any of the joy at all. Like I still fully appreciate and love being able to, you know, be dialed into my breathing, be in control of when things come out, control the voice. You know, it feels like a sharp knife going through warm butter or something, and it feels good.
Yeah.
And I think that'll last the rest of our life. I mean, I don't think that's one that'll ever go away, because those stuttering memories, right, run deep. And once again, to clarify, you know, as I kept saying on the course, we are not, you know, having a stuttering moment is in no way a failure. Having a tough conversation, whatever, you know, obviously we want to get back to discipline and getting dialed in, but in no way is that a failure. We are people that stutter. It would be weird if we never stuttered. Right? That'd be like, you know, that'd be weird. So just like an athlete stepping on to the court, you know, like LeBron James, right, has to be willing to miss some shots. If you're going to shoot the ball, you're going to miss some shots. That comes with the territory. For us, the underlying bottom line is that, you know, and that's in the logo, right? The stutter with confidence inside of the iceberg. And the with confidence is, you know, the part below the iceberg to replace the shame, the guilt, the embarrassment, the sense of inferiority, all that stuff. And above the surface is the stutter. And the analogy is, right, if you work on melting much of that iceberg below, that 80% of the iceberg below the surface, then the 10 or 20% above the surface is going to get much more shaky up there because you're taking away its foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're also focused on that, right? So there is no shame in stuttering and losing control, having a tough time. You know, that's part of stepping on the floor. Not that we can't use our technique and control it. We can, but look, sometimes you get sloppy and sometimes, you know, stuff happens, you're tired, whatever. Once again, not that it has to happen, but if it does, my point is we can't be afraid of that, right? We can't live in fear of, oh, what if I stutter again? No, if I stutter again, I'll do my thing, whatever. Stuttering doesn't make me inferior. It doesn't make me less of a person. It's kind of annoying on my end because I have to struggle through the word. That's annoying. But in the way, it doesn't make me, less of a human. If anything, it just shows that we're still on this journey. And so I just want to emphasize that too. We are going after control and discipline and all that, but we're also not fearing, not even really worrying about blocks, right? If they come, they come. We'll do our thing. We'll be able to handle it. And if not, then we'll just get back to discipline, and then we'll be able to handle it tomorrow, that sort of thing. So that's a part of it as well.
Yeah, and these techniques and the coastal breathing, it no longer feels like my stuttering is a chokehold on me, as it always has.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? Not to be getting choked when you're trying to communicate.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. That's a lot more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rachel, thanks for joining us for the full podcast. Thanks for joining us last Friday. I know that one was probably probably felt a bit more challenging than this one, perhaps. But thanks both times, and like I said, you're a lifetime member on the program, so we'll be talking to you for a long time, and enjoying the social network. Hey, get her name?
Her name is Jelly.
Jelly?
Yes.
Nice. Hey, Jelly. Hey, Jelly. Oh. Good to see you. I think that tongue licking is a sign of affection. If I were there, you can't lick me over Zoom, but awesome. Well, nice. That's the first dog we found on the podcast. Awesome. All right. Good talking, Rachel. We'll talk tomorrow at the warm-up session.
Yes.
Bye for now.